Commander Jake Morrison stood at the observation deck of Earth Defense Station Horizon, watching the blue planet spin slowly below him. The station orbited high above Earth, and Jake had been its commander for 3 years now. He liked the quiet moments when he could see his homeworld and remember why he chose to protect it. Those quiet moments were about to end forever. The communication panel behind him started beeping with urgent signals from the outer colonies. Jake turned around and saw Lieutenant Amy Foster running toward him with a datapad in her hands. Her face looked worried, and that made Jake worry too because Amy never got scared easily. Amy handed him the datapad and said the words that would change everything. Strange ships had been spotted at the edge of human space moving toward the inner systems. The ships were big, and they moved with purpose like they knew exactly where they were going. The outer colonies had sent warnings before going silent one by one. Dr. Lisa Carter worked in the science lab 3 levels below the observation deck. She was the best xenobiologist on the station, and maybe in all of human space. When Jake brought her the intercepted signals from the approaching ships, Lisa went to work right away. She had seen these signal patterns before in old archives from other species. The signals belonged to the Krathan Empire, and that name made Lisa feel cold inside. Every species in the galaxy knew about the Krathan, even though most had never seen them. They were called the Enders because no species had ever survived their conquest campaigns. In over 1,000 years, they had conquered more than 200 worlds and turned entire civilizations into empty shells. Captain Ryan Bell commanded the patrol vessel Defiant near Jupiter and its moons. His ship was small but fast, and his crew was good at their jobs. When the damaged refugee ship appeared on their sensors, Ryan knew something terrible was happening. The ship barely had life support working, and it carried survivors from the human colony of New Sparta. The refugees were not human, though. They belonged to a peaceful trading species called the Villani, and they looked like tall, thin humans with gray skin and large, dark eyes. Elder Zephan was their leader, and he was very old even by Villani standards. When Ryan brought him aboard the Defiant, the old alien grabbed his arm with surprising strength. Zephan told Ryan things that made his blood run cold. The Krathan did not just conquer worlds. They broke the spirit of entire species and turned survivors into hollow versions of what they used to be. The Krathan had special weapons that attacked the mind and made people give up hope. Once a species lost hope, they never fought back again. The numbers that Zephan shared were even worse than the psychological warfare. The Krathan fleet had over 3,000 ships, and each one was larger and more advanced than the best human warships. They had weapons that could destroy planets and shields that could stop any attack humans might try. The mathematical chance of human victory was 0. Back on Earth Defense Station Horizon, Amy Foster was running calculations based on the refugee ship data. She was good with numbers and tactical analysis, but these numbers made no sense. How could humanity fight an enemy with such overwhelming advantages? Amy had studied every major space battle in human history, and none of them prepared her for this kind of enemy. Admiral Greg Parker called an emergency meeting of Earth Military Council as soon as the first Krathan scouts entered the Sol system. The meeting room filled with the highest-ranking officers and government officials from across human space. The debate started immediately and got heated very quickly. Some officials wanted to surrender right away to save as many human lives as possible. They argued that fighting would only make the Krathan angry and lead to more deaths. Other officials wanted to organize a fighting retreat that would buy time for civilian evacuation to the outer colonies. They thought maybe some humans could escape and rebuild somewhere else. Commander Morrison had a different idea that surprised everyone in the room. He stood up and said, humans should make the Krathan pay so dearly for Earth that they would think twice before attacking another human world. Even if humanity lost the war, they could make sure the victory cost the Krathan more than they expected. The debate went on for hours while Krathan ships moved closer to Earth. Finally, the Krathan sent their message on every human communication channel at the same time. It was their standard ultimatum that they had used on 200 other worlds before Earth. The message was simple and terrifying. Humanity had exactly 72 hours to surrender completely or face total annihilation. Every human man, woman, and child would be killed, and Earth would be burned until nothing remained alive. No exceptions would be made and no mercy would be shown. What happened next surprised everyone, including the Krathen, who were watching human communications. Instead of panic and chaos, the message seemed to wake something up inside humanity. People did not run screaming through the streets or beg their leaders to surrender. They got angry. Within hours of the ultimatum, every human settlement from the smallest asteroid mining station to the largest orbital city began preparing for war. Civilian ships started moving supplies and weapons to military bases. Factories that made consumer goods switched to making ammunition and armor. Even children started helping by carrying messages and supplies. The Krathen had studied human communications before attacking, and they expected fear and despair. Instead, they intercepted messages full of determination and anger. Humans were not asking how to surrender. They were asking how to fight and where they could help. Captain Bell received orders to return to Earth immediately with the refugee ship and its valuable intelligence. As the Defiant accelerated toward home, Bell looked at the tactical data one more time. The odds were impossible, but humans had faced impossible odds before. His species had survived ice ages and plagues and wars that should have destroyed them completely. Dr. Carter worked through the night analyzing every piece of Krathen technology in the refugee ship data. She knew that understanding the enemy was the first step toward defeating them. The Krathen were powerful, but they were not gods. Every technology had weaknesses and every species had blind spots. Jake Morrison stood at his observation deck again as the 72-hour countdown began. Earth looked the same as always, but everything had changed. Humanity was about to face its greatest test, and Jake could feel something stirring in his people that the Krathen had never encountered before. The aliens had conquered 200 worlds by breaking the spirit of their enemies. They were about to learn that some spirits could not be broken no matter how much force was applied. Humans had been forged by millions of years of surviving on a planet that tried to kill them every day. They had learned that the only response to extinction was to become stronger. The countdown continued and humanity prepared for war. The 72 hours passed and Earth did not surrender. Instead, every human settlement in the solar system sent the same message back to the Krathen fleet. Humanity would fight, and they would make the aliens pay for every inch of space they tried to take. The Krathen had never received such a response before. Captain Ryan Bell led a small fleet of converted civilian vessels toward Mars, where the first Krathen ships were gathering. His fleet included cargo haulers fitted with missile launchers and passenger ships that now carried fighters instead of tourists. The crews were mostly volunteers who had never fought in space before, but they knew how to follow orders and they were not afraid to die. The first battle near Mars was a disaster for the human fleet. Krathen weapons tore through human shields like they were made of paper, and their ships moved faster than anything humans had ever built. Within the first hour, Bell lost half his ships, including the converted freighter New Hope that carried 200 volunteer fighters. Something strange happened, though, as each human ship was destroyed. Instead of running away or begging for mercy, the dying crews broadcast their exact positions and all their tactical data to the remaining vessels. They shared what they had learned about Krathen weapons and shields, even as their ships broke apart around them. No one retreated and no one asked for quarter. Bell watched his friends die on the communication screens, but he also watched them teach the rest of the fleet how to fight better. The human ships started working together in ways the Krathen did not expect. They used ramming attacks and suicide runs that traded human lives for alien technology and tactical advantages. Engineer Tony Hayes worked in the asteroid belt managing mining operations that provided raw materials for Earth industries. When the battle reports from Mars reached his station, Tony made a decision that would change everything. Instead of running away to the outer system, he started rigging explosive charges throughout the entire asteroid field. Tony had spent 15 years learning every rock and crevice in the belt. He knew exactly where to place charges for maximum effect and how to time the explosions perfectly. When the Krathen advance fleet arrived to secure the mining facilities, they found themselves flying into a trap that had been months in the making. The artificial meteor storm that Tony created destroyed dozens of Krathen ships and damaged many more. The aliens had expected to find human miners cowering in their stations. Instead, they found an engineer who had turned an entire region of space into a weapon aimed directly at them. Dr. Lisa Carter worked day and night in her laboratory analyzing wreckage from the first battles. Every piece of destroyed Krathen technology told her something new about how their ships worked and how they might be defeated. She discovered that Krathen vessels were designed to fight conventional space battles, but they had critical weaknesses when faced with unconventional tactics. Lisa shared her discoveries with every human commander in the solar system, along with detailed plans for exploiting the alien weaknesses. The Krathen relied heavily on their computer systems to coordinate attacks, and their shields were calibrated to stop energy weapons, but not physical projectiles moving at high speed. War Master Thakkel commanded the Krathen invasion fleet from his massive flagship. He had conquered 47 worlds for the Empire, and he had never seen anything like human behavior. Most species broke after losing their first major battle, but humans seemed to become more determined with each defeat. Their communications showed no signs of declining morale. Thakkel studied the tactical reports from his subordinates and found patterns that disturbed him. Human ships were using ramming attacks and boarding actions that violated every rule of civilized warfare. They traded their lives so freely for tactical advantages that Krathen casualties were mounting much faster than expected. Admiral Greg Parker implemented a strategy he called Protocol Defiance from his command center, deep under the Rocky Mountains. The protocol abandoned traditional military doctrine in favor of asymmetric warfare that played to human strengths while avoiding direct confrontations with superior Krathen technology. Human ships began attacking Krathen supply lines instead of fighting their warships directly. Converted civilian vessels loaded with explosives rammed alien fuel depots and communication relays. Fighter pilots flew suicide missions that destroyed targets worth 100 times more than their own ships. The Krathen had never encountered an enemy willing to trade lives so freely for strategic advantage. Their own culture valued individual survival above collective goals, so they could not understand why humans kept fighting when victory seemed impossible. Every tactical manual in the Krathen military assumed that enemies would eventually seek terms when losses became too heavy. Captain Susan Wells defended the human colonies on Luna with a force that was outnumbered 20-1. The Krathen expected to take the moon in a few hours, but Susan turned the lunar surface into a fortress that held out for 6 days. Mining equipment became artillery, and civilian habitats became bunkers that channeled alien forces into carefully prepared kill zones. Susan's defenders used the low-gravity environment to their advantage in ways the Krathen could not match. Soldiers could leap between buildings and use the moon's terrain to set up ambushes that devastated alien ground forces. Every meter of lunar soil was paid for with Krathen blood. The Battle of Luna became a symbol of human resistance throughout the solar system. News of the defense spread to every human settlement and inspired new acts of defiance against the invaders. Civilian volunteers started attacking Krathen patrols with improvised weapons and mining charges. Tony Hayes coordinated resistance activities throughout the asteroid belt using his network of mining stations as communication relays. The belt had always been home to independent-minded people who did not like taking orders from anyone. When the Krathen tried to occupy their territory, they found that every asteroid could be turned into a weapon. Amy Foster analyzed the tactical data from every battle and started seeing patterns in Krathen behavior. The aliens were creatures of habit who followed predictable protocols when attacking defended positions. Once humans understood these patterns, they could set traps that turned Krathen strengths into weaknesses. The lunar defense finally fell when Krathen reinforcements arrived with heavier weapons that could crack the human bunkers. Susan Wells died, defending the main colony, but her last transmission became legendary throughout human space. She told her fellow defenders that they had proven something important to the galaxy. Humans could not be broken by superior firepower or overwhelming odds. They grew stronger under pressure and more creative when faced with impossible challenges. The Krathen had conquered 200 worlds, but they had never fought a species that thrived on adversity the way humans did. The fall of Luna cost the Krathen more ships and soldiers than they typically lost conquering entire star systems. Their casualty reports showed a level of resistance that violated every assumption their military leaders had made about human capabilities. War Master Thakol found himself requesting reinforcements for the first time in his career. Jake Morrison coordinated the defense of Earth orbital stations as Krathan forces moved closer to the homeworld. His remaining ships were battered and outnumbered, but they had learned how to hurt the enemy. Every human who died fighting passed their knowledge to those still alive. The aliens had expected a quick campaign that would add another easy conquest to their empire. Instead, they found themselves locked in a grinding war of attrition against an enemy that refused to stay defeated. Human resistance was growing stronger and more sophisticated with each passing day. Dr. Carter intercepted Krathan communications that revealed growing frustration among their commanders. The invasion was taking much longer than planned, and their losses were mounting beyond acceptable levels. For the first time in their history, the Krathan were beginning to question whether a conquest was worth its cost. 3 months had passed since the Krathan invasion began, and War Master Thakol faced a problem he had never encountered before. The Empire had never fought a campaign lasting more than a few weeks, but human resistance showed no signs of weakening. In fact, human tactics were becoming more sophisticated and deadly with each passing day. Thakol sent urgent reports to the Krathan High Command, explaining that this conquest was unlike any other in Imperial history. The humans were not behaving according to any known patterns of defeated species. Instead of breaking under pressure, they seemed to adapt and grow stronger as the war continued. Commander Jake Morrison now led the scattered remnants of Earth orbital defenses from hidden bases throughout the asteroid belt. His strategy was simple but effective. Instead of trying to hold territory, he focused on destroying everything of value before the Krathan could use it. Fuel depots and communication relays were rigged to explode when alien forces approached. Jake called this approach scorched space, and it was driving the Krathan commanders to frustration. They found themselves controlling empty regions while struggling to maintain supply lines that stretched back to their home territory. Every facility they captured was useless because humans destroyed it before retreating. Captain Amy Foster had been promoted after her superior died defending the Mars colonies. She now commanded a group of civilian volunteers who were converting asteroid habitats into mobile weapons platforms. These ghost stations appeared to be abandoned refugee camps but were actually heavily armed traps operated by people who had no intention of surviving the encounter. Amy's volunteers came from every walk of human life. Former teachers and accountants worked alongside miners and engineers to create weapons that could destroy Krathan ships. They used their intimate knowledge of asteroid construction to hide massive explosives inside seemingly innocent civilian structures. When Krathan vessels moved in to investigate what appeared to be defenseless refugee camps, they found themselves under attack from hidden weapons that emerged from concealed compartments. The volunteers operating these stations knew they would die, but they also knew their sacrifice would help other humans survive. Dr. Lisa Carter made a breakthrough in her research that explained why humans were so resistant to Krathan psychological warfare. She discovered that human DNA contained genetic markers that made them naturally immune to the mental attacks that had broken so many other species. Millions of years of surviving on a hostile planet had forged humans into something unique. Lisa began developing countermeasures that would protect the few alien allies fighting alongside humanity. The Villani refugees who had warned Earth about the Krathan were now serving as technical advisors, and they provided valuable intelligence about Imperial tactics and technology. The Krathan attempted their most devastating attack yet against Earth, major population centers. They used biological weapons specifically designed to cause maximum psychological trauma, while leaving infrastructure intact for later use. The weapons were tailored to break human will by targeting the brain chemistry. They controlled hope and determination. The attack backfired in ways that shocked both sides. Instead of surrendering, the human survivors used the devastated cities as cover for guerrilla operations that inflicted massive casualties on Krathan ground forces. The aliens discovered that destroying human homes only made the survivors more dangerous and more creative in their resistance. Captain Ryan Bell operated from secret bases in the outer solar system, leading increasingly bold raids against Krathan supply convoys. His mixed fleet of human survivors and alien refugees had perfected hit-and-run tactics that left the enemy confused and demoralized. They learned to use captured Krathen technology against its creators. Bell's forces became experts at boarding, actions that captured intact alien vessels along with their advanced weapons and shield systems. Human engineers reverse-engineered everything they could get their hands on and started building hybrid ships that combined the best of both technologies. Engineer Tony Hayes had transformed the entire asteroid belt into a three-dimensional minefield that could be triggered from hidden control stations. Using a network of secret transmitters, he could cause massive explosions that appeared to come from empty space. Krathen fleets found themselves under constant attack from an enemy they could not locate or target. The psychological effect on Krathen crews was devastating. Their ships began showing signs of paranoia and stress as they never knew when the next attack would come. Some alien commanders requested transfer to other operations, claiming that fighting humans had become too dangerous for their mental health. War Master Thakol faced growing pressure from the Krathen High Command to end the campaign quickly. The Empire's other military operations had been delayed because so many resources were tied up in the Sol system. For the first time in Krathen history, their war machine was being strained by resistance from a single species. Dr. Carter Research, team working from deep underground laboratories, developed new weapons specifically designed to exploit Krathen weaknesses. They created computer viruses that attacked alien cybernetic implants and electromagnetic pulse devices that overloaded their neural interfaces. For the first time, human technology became superior to that of their conquerors. The Krathen attempted to negotiate, offering to spare Earth if humans surrendered all their other colonies. The response from Admiral Greg Parker was broadcast across the galaxy on every available frequency. Humanity did not negotiate with genocidal tyrants, and the aliens would learn why attacking humans was the biggest mistake in their species' history. Several Krathen commanders privately approached War Master Thakol requesting reassignment to other campaigns. They claimed that fighting humans was psychologically damaging to their crews in ways that violated Imperial military regulations. The constant stress of never knowing when or where the next attack would come was breaking down alien discipline. Captain Susan Wells had survived the fall of Luna by escaping through underground tunnels that connected the lunar colonies. She emerged from the resistance networks that had formed in conquered territories and began coordinating guerrilla operations that turned occupied zones into nightmares for Krathen forces. Wells broadcast a message to all human forces that became legendary throughout the solar system. She told them that the Krathen had wanted to break humanity, but instead had shown humans what they were truly capable of achieving. Humans were the children of a world that had tried to kill them every day for millions of years. And they had not only survived but thrived. The message explained that no force in the universe could break humans because they were already broken and forged back together stronger than before. Every challenge that should have destroyed them had instead made them more resilient and more determined to protect what they loved. Even captured humans in Krathen prison camps began sabotaging their captors' operations from within after hearing Wells' message. The aliens discovered that humans were impossible to truly subjugate because they never stopped looking for ways to resist even when defeat seemed certain. Commander Morrison led a desperate assault on a Krathen command ship using a captured alien vessel as a disguise. Human commandos infiltrated the massive dreadnought and fought their way to the command center where they captured critical intelligence about Imperial operations throughout the galaxy. The intelligence revealed that the Krathen Empire was far more vulnerable than anyone had realized. Their entire civilization depended on the psychological dominance they maintained over their subject species. If other races saw that the Krathen could be successfully resisted, the entire Imperial structure might collapse. Amy Foster coordinated the defense of the remaining orbital stations around Earth as Krathen forces prepared for their final assault on the home world. Her converted civilian vessels were outnumbered and outgunned, but they had learned how to fight in ways that maximized human advantages, while minimizing alien strengths. The tide was beginning to turn in ways that no one had expected when the war began. Human resistance had evolved from desperate survival into something approaching actual military effectiveness. The Krathen were discovering that some enemies could not be conquered no matter how much force was applied against them. The message from Captain Susan Wells spread throughout human space like wildfire igniting something that had been building in every human heart since the invasion began. Even captured humans in Krathen prison camps found ways to sabotage their captors' operations after hearing her words. The aliens discovered that humans were impossible to truly subjugate because they never stopped looking for ways to resist. Captain Ryan Bell had established a hidden base in the Kuiper Belt beyond Pluto, where damaged human ships could be repaired and rearmed. His mixed fleet of human survivors and alien refugees had grown into a formidable fighting force that specialized in hit-and-run attacks against Krathen supply lines. They had learned to think like pirates and fight like demons. Bell's raiders had perfected the art of boarding Krathen vessels and turning their own technology against them. Human engineers worked around the clock to reverse engineer alien weapons and shield systems. Soon hybrid ships began appearing that combined human creativity with Krathen engineering in ways that surprised everyone, including their builders. The most successful hybrid design was a converted mining ship called the Fury that mounted captured Krathen plasma cannons on a human-built frame. The ship could accelerate faster than any alien vessel and hit harder than ships twice its size. Bell used the Fury to lead raids that destroyed Krathen bases and rescued human prisoners. Engineer Tony Hayes had turned the asteroid belt into his personal weapon against the invasion. His network of hidden transmitters could trigger massive explosions anywhere in the belt, making it impossible for Krathen ships to travel safely through the region. Hayes called his creation the Rock Garden, and it had become the graveyard for dozens of alien vessels. The psychological effect on Krathen crews was even more devastating than the physical damage. Their ships developed a condition that human doctors called space paranoia, where alien soldiers became afraid to leave their vessels. Some Krathen commanders reported that their crews were having nervous breakdowns and requesting transfer to safer assignments. Dr. Lisa Carter's underground laboratories had become the center of human weapons development. Her team created computer viruses that could attack Krathen cybernetic implants and electromagnetic pulse devices that overloaded alien neural interfaces. For the first time since the invasion began, human technology was becoming superior to that of their enemies. Carter's most important discovery was that human brain chemistry made them naturally resistant to Krathen psychological warfare techniques. The same genetic markers that helped humans survive on Earth for millions of years also protected them from alien mental attacks. This explained why human morale remained high while other species broke under similar pressure. War Master Thakol found himself in an impossible situation, as reports from the Sol system grew worse each day. The Krathen High Command demanded quick victory, but human resistance was actually growing stronger as the war continued. Several of his subordinate commanders had privately requested reassignment, claiming that fighting humans was damaging to their crew's mental health. The Empire's other military operations had been delayed because so many resources were tied up, trying to conquer one small solar system. For the first time in Krathen history, their war machine was being strained by resistance from a single species. The High Command was beginning to question Thakol's competence as a military leader. Admiral Greg Parker coordinated human resistance from his command bunker deep under the Rocky Mountains. His staff had grown to include alien refugees from dozens of species that the Krathen had conquered over the centuries. These advisors provided valuable intelligence about Imperial tactics and technology while learning human methods of asymmetric warfare. Parker's strategy focused on making the conquest so expensive that the Krathen would eventually decide it was not worth the cost. Every alien ship destroyed and every soldier killed made the war less profitable for the Empire. Human forces traded their lives freely, but they made sure each death cost the enemy far more than it cost humanity. Commander Jake Morrison led the final assault on Luna to retake the moon from Krathen occupation forces. His attack force consisted of converted civilian ships and volunteer crews who had trained for months in asteroid belt combat. They knew the odds were against them, but they also knew that Luna had to be liberated. The battle for Luna lasted 3 days and became one of the most savage fights of the entire war. Human forces used underground tunnels and mining equipment to attack Krathen positions from unexpected directions. The low-gravity environment favored human tactics that emphasized mobility and surprise over firepower. Morrison's assault succeeded when Captain Amy Foster led a group of combat engineers in destroying the Crathen Command Center. The explosion could be seen from Earth and signaled the first major human victory since the invasion began. Luna was free, and thousands of human prisoners were liberated from alien camps. The liberation of Luna triggered something unexpected throughout Crathen, controlled space. Other species that had been conquered by the Empire began to remember what resistance looked like. The human example spread to dozens of worlds where subject peoples started their own rebellion movements against imperial rule. Captain Wells coordinated these uprisings from her base on the dark side of Luna. She had become the unofficial ambassador between humanity and the growing alliance of rebel species. Her message that no force could break the human spirit had evolved into a rallying cry for oppressed peoples throughout the galaxy. Tony Hayes used his asteroid belt network to establish communication links with rebel forces on distant worlds. Human tactical expertise and captured Crathen technology were shared with anyone willing to fight the Empire. What had started as Earth's defensive war was becoming a galactic revolution. Dr. Carter's research revealed that the Crathen Empire was built on a foundation of psychological dominance that could be shattered if enough subject species refused to submit. The aliens had conquered through fear and intimidation, but they had never faced coordinated resistance from multiple species working together. Bell's raiding fleet had grown large enough to attack major Crathen installations throughout the outer solar system. His ships rescued prisoners and captured weapons while spreading news of human victories to every corner of the galaxy. The aliens who had once dismissed humans as primitive savages now found themselves seeking human approval and tactical guidance. War. Master Thakol received orders from the High Command to end the Earth campaign immediately regardless of cost. The Empire was facing rebellions on dozens of worlds and could not afford to keep its best forces tied up in one solar system. Thakol was told to use any means necessary to break human resistance once and for all. The Crathen response was to deploy a planet-killer weapon that could crack Earth's crust and boil away its oceans. The massive device was brought to the edge of the solar system under heavy guard, while Thakol issued his final ultimatum. Humanity had one last chance to surrender before their homeworld was destroyed completely. The human response came not from any government or military leader, but from ordinary people throughout the solar system. Miners and farmers and teachers all sent the same message to the Crathen fleet. They dared the aliens to destroy Earth because even if they killed the human homeworld, they would spend the rest of their existence looking over their shoulders knowing that somewhere, in the darkness, humans were coming for them. Morrison prepared his remaining forces for one final desperate attack on the planet-killer weapon. He knew it was probably a suicide mission, but he also knew that Earth could not be allowed to die without a fight. Every human ship in the solar system began moving toward the Crathen superweapon for a battle that would decide the fate of two species. Amy Foster ran calculations on the planet-killer weapon and discovered a potential weakness in its design. If the device could be damaged at exactly the right moment during its charging sequence, the resulting explosion might destroy the weapon and any Crathen ships nearby. The attack would have to be timed perfectly and would require someone to sacrifice themselves to trigger the explosion. The final battle was about to begin, and humanity prepared to prove that some things were worth dying for. The Crathen had brought their ultimate weapon to end human resistance, but they were about to learn that the human spirit could not be killed by any force in the universe. The final battle began when every human ship in the solar system converged on the Crathen planet-killer weapon. Commander Jake Morrison led the attack in his battered flagship while Captain Ryan Bell's raiders hit the enemy flanks. The massive, alien device hung in space like a metal moon surrounded by the largest Crathen fleet ever assembled. Engineer Tony Hayes had one last surprise for the invaders. His network of hidden transmitters throughout the asteroid belt could be linked together to create a gravitational anomaly that would tear apart anything caught in its effect. The plan was desperate and had never been tested, but Hayes was willing to risk everything to save Earth. Dr. Lisa Carter monitored the planet-killer weapon from her underground laboratory and discovered its fatal weakness. The device needed to maintain perfect stability during its charging sequence, or the massive energies involved would tear it apart from within. If human forces could destabilize the weapon at exactly the right moment, The explosion would destroy the entire Krathen fleet. War Master Thakol watched the human attack with growing amazement. He had expected the remaining Earth forces to flee or surrender when faced with the Empire's ultimate weapon. Instead, every human ship was racing toward certain death in a final act of defiance that violated everything Thakol understood about military logic. The battle raged for hours as human ships threw themselves against the Krathen defenses protecting the planet killer. Captain Amy Foster led a squadron of converted mining vessels in suicide runs that punched holes through alien shield walls. Her ships were destroyed one by one, but each attack brought the human fleet closer to their target. Captain Susan Wells coordinated the assault from Luna while maintaining communication with rebel forces throughout the galaxy. The liberation of Earth had become a symbol of hope for oppressed species everywhere, and the outcome of this battle would determine whether the Krathen Empire survived or fell. Bell's hybrid ship Fury carved through Krathen formations like a blade through paper. The vessel's combination of human speed and alien firepower made it nearly unstoppable as it cleared a path for Morrison's main attack force. Bell knew he was probably going to die, but he was determined to take as many enemies with him as possible. Hayes triggered his gravitational weapon just as the planet killer began its final charging sequence. The asteroid belt erupted in a cascade of explosions that sent massive rocks hurtling toward the Krathen fleet at incredible velocity. The artificial meteor storm caught the aliens completely by surprise and shattered their defensive formations. The planet killer weapon began to shake apart as gravitational forces tore at its massive structure. Thakol realized that his super weapon was becoming a liability that threatened to destroy his entire fleet. He ordered an immediate retreat, but it was already too late to escape the growing gravitational anomaly. Morrison's flagship broke through the last line of Krathen defenders and rammed directly into the planet killer's main reactor chamber. The explosion that followed lit up the entire solar system and could be seen from Earth as a new star burning in the sky. The Krathen superweapon was gone, and most of their fleet went with it. Thakol's surviving ships found themselves trapped between Hayes's gravitational weapon and the expanding debris field from their own destroyed superweapon. The War Master, who had conquered 47 worlds for the Empire, now faced total defeat at the hands of a species he had expected to crush in days. The destruction of the planet killer sent shockwaves throughout Krathen space as news of the defeat spread to every corner of the Empire. Subject species that had lived in fear for generations suddenly realized that their oppressors could be beaten. Rebellions erupted on dozens of worlds as the myth of Krathen invincibility died. Admiral Greg Parker received surrender offers from Krathen commanders throughout the solar system as their forces collapsed under the weight of human resistance. The aliens who had come to conquer Earth were now begging for mercy from the species they had tried to exterminate. Wells emerged from the underground resistance networks to accept the formal surrender of Krathen ground forces on Luna. The ceremony was broadcast throughout human space and became a symbol of what could be accomplished when free people refused to submit to tyranny. Dr. Carter's analysis of captured Krathen technology revealed the true extent of their empire's vulnerability. The aliens had built their civilization on the assumption that conquered species would remain broken forever. They had no contingency plans for dealing with coordinated resistance or rebellions that spread across multiple worlds. Bell survived the final battle, though his ship was badly damaged. He was appointed commander of a joint human and alien fleet dedicated to hunting down the remaining Krathen forces and preventing any attempt to rebuild their empire. The galaxy would never again be threatened by the species that had once called themselves the Enders. Hayes's gravitational weapon had torn a permanent scar through the asteroid belt, but it had also created a memorial to human determination that would last for millions of years. The debris field from destroyed Krathen ships served as a reminder that no force in the universe could break a species that refused to stay broken. The Krathen High Command attempted one last desperate gambit by threatening to use biological weapons against Earth's population. The human response was swift and decisive. Parker's fleet destroyed the alien research stations before they could deploy their weapons and captured the scientists responsible for developing them. War Master Thakol was taken prisoner along with the surviving members of his command staff. When Dr. Carter asked him to explain how humans had survived when so many other species had fallen, His answer became part of galactic history. He said that the Krathen had made the same mistake that Earth's environment had made for millions of years. The aliens had assumed that pressure breaks things, but pressure does not break humans. Instead, it transforms them into something harder and more resilient than before. Humans were the children of a world that had never stopped trying to kill them, and they had learned that the only response to extinction was to become unstoppable. Captain. Wells was appointed as the first human representative to the newly formed Galactic Council that would replace the Krathen Empire. Her message about unbreakable human spirit had become the foundation for a new age of cooperation between free species who would never again bow to tyranny. The war was over, but its lessons would endure for generations. Humanity had taken its place as the guardians of galactic freedom after proving that some things were more important than survival. The species that had been expected to break under pressure had instead shattered the chains that bound an entire galaxy. Morrison stood once again on the observation deck of Earth Defense Station Horizon, looking down at the blue planet that had survived its greatest test. The scars of war were visible from space, but so were the signs of rebuilding and renewal. Humanity had faced extinction and emerged stronger than ever before. The galaxy was free, and it would remain free as long as humans remembered the lesson they had learned during their darkest hour. No force in the universe could break a species that drew strength from adversity and found hope in the face of impossible odds. The children of Earth had become the protectors of all free peoples everywhere. In the end, the Krathen Empire fell not because of superior weapons or overwhelming numbers, but because they encountered something they had never faced before. They met a species that grew stronger under pressure and more determined when confronted with extinction. They learned too late that some spirits cannot be broken, no matter how much force is applied against them. The stars belong to the free.